we're now going to go into our last but also incredible panel. Our conversation will focus on the investor perspective. So we have invited members of our Endeavor local investor network, our mentor network, to provide their thoughts. So please join me in welcoming our moderator for this conversation, Juan Pablo D'Alessandro. He's our head of entrepreneur selection and growth at Endeavor in Miami. Salomon Snedny, sorry about that, Salo, Managing Director of Ocean Azul Partners, Patricia Wexler, Managing Director of Starlight Ventures, and Pablo Sanchez, Investment Team Chief of Staff at Softbank Group International. So welcome, everyone, and thanks for joining us for this great conversation. Juan Pablo.
Hey, everybody. Thank you, Salo. Thank you, Patty. Thank you, Pablo. It's great having everyone here. For those who don't know these amazing people, they're fantastic investors in our ecosystem. These are the people that are actually fueling, giving the fuel to our entrepreneurs in Miami. So we're super excited to have them here. So welcome, everyone. Thanks a lot, and this will be a fantastic chat.
Thank you.
Right. So let's start maybe with a more general question for everyone to understand a little bit where you stand in terms of your thesis. And my first question to you guys was, what are the most important things that you guys look for when evaluating potential investments in a company? Maybe Salo can start.
No problem. Glad to start. So I think my fellow panelists here will agree with me that first and foremost is team. Obviously, you want a great horse that can get you to the finish line, but nothing beats an amazing team, because you need resilience. We invest in C2A startups, and all I know is that a year or two out, the startup will look nothing like what we invested in. But you'll see the seeds are where we started. But at the end of the day, you want entrepreneurs that can change. Outside of that, for us in particular, we like stuff that's differentiated. We like stuff where we can add value, where we have somebody in our network that can help accelerate the strategy. So some moat and some differentiation is key for us.
Great. I don't know if Pablo or Patty have something different to add to that. I'm sure you guys have your own experience as well, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, not to belabor the point, it's great. And in early stage, the impact of team is even more, because there's so much pivoting to happen. And, Warren Buffett has a famous line that says, give me a great manager in a terrible industry, and, it'll be the manager's reputation that will be tarnished. And I think that becomes more true as companies evolve in their life cycle. But early on, the entrepreneur is capable of pivoting together with their team. So you assess it all in the aggregate, but the entrepreneur will be able to see something and adjust as they change. So it really comes down to the people.
Yeah, I would say same as my two other panelists. At Softbank, we're obviously looking for companies. We're growth investors. We're looking for companies that are using technology to disrupt industries. That's sort of at the core of the Softbank DNA. But everything else, the fundamentals about the team and the entrepreneur, are exactly the same.
Great. So I guess everyone mentioned the team as one of the most important things that you guys take a look into. So you've been in this ecosystem for a while. You understand this market. You're investing in this market. What are the things regarding the team, regarding Miami founders in particular, that you see that it's maybe different from other markets that you actually calls your attention, or that should call the attention of investors?
Perfect. I'll maybe take this one. And maybe as quick background, I was born and raised in Venezuela, lived briefly across Latin America, have been in the four corners of the US, including Silicon Valley, for a long time, and have now been back here for a decade. And I think what's most exciting about Miami is that it truly is diverse in the pure sense of the word, meaning people have come from so many different geographies and life experiences that it both enriches the ecosystem, but it makes them more open to other things. Like when many of us have spent quite a bit of time in Silicon Valley, we have learned best practices, which is wonderful. But we have also been slowly boxed into a pattern recognition that is hard to get out of. And I was really pleasantly surprised when I moved back to Miami and I keep trying to find that balance between kind of generic best practices. What are the top entrepreneurs doing out there versus can we think orthogonally? And every story about a great company comes from an insight that is differentiated. And it's very hard to have differentiated insights when we're all reading, talking, doing, hanging the same exact thing. So that's maybe the most exciting. It is multicultural. It is a very international mindset. People are accustomed to different languages, travel. So that makes it, when I lived on Sand Hill, we were very kind of lazy about investing beyond Sand Hill. And here, because the ecosystem has never been as robust as it is now, we're all very used to doing international flights, international calls. So I think maybe those are two highlights.
Yeah. I don't know if Salo or Pablo want to add something there.
I second Patty's comments. I was going to talk about diversity and the fact that you meet an entrepreneur here, and every entrepreneur is different than the last one you met. There's such diversity, and I think everybody knows that diversity and inclusion is such a great factor. So I think Miami has great potential as a result of the fact that we're really truly a melting pot. I mean, I don't know what a local looks like because it depends what corner of the city you're looking at. So I think that's amazing. I think that our view into Latin America is very unique. I tell people that Miami is as close as you can be to the U.S. without being inside of the U.S., right? Because everybody here pretty much came from somewhere else, and they have a great view of the world and a great view of Latin America. And I'll just add something that I've noticed. I think Miami entrepreneurs are scrappy. I think that they're looking to get profits pretty quickly, where the model out west has been grow revenues, and I think burning cash has been pretty acceptable. I find that entrepreneurs this side of the Mississippi, at least, or in this area, really are very conscious about how much cash they're burning, and maybe that's because adversity or constraint of cash is the mother of all necessity. So I think that's really helped. Pablo, any comments? Turn it over to you.
Yeah, so we've had the privilege to go through almost 500 companies since we launched the Miami initiative at Softbank. And we've noticed exactly the same as you have mentioned, just the diversity of the entrepreneurs in the pipeline. It's been incredible. We'll meet people from Israel doing cutting edge AI, obviously a lot of Latin influence. And just it's a melting pot, which makes it a really exciting and diverse mix. Interesting to see how that's going to evolve in the next few years as more people start to gravitate to the area. And I've also noticed just a lot of really fun companies in the area. To be honest, we're seeing a lot of companies in the travel and hospitality space. Those seem to gravitate to Miami disproportionately. So it's certainly been a privilege.
Yeah, that's great. So diversity is a word that came up many times during these conversations and will come up whenever someone talks about the Miami tech ecosystem. And it's true. Diversity brings different perspectives, and at the end of the day, different perspectives make better decisions, right? To move on to the next question, as many of you know, back in 2010 or 11, there was really not that much in the Miami entrepreneurial ecosystem. The lab started open up, which is of course still around today, very involved in the community. And then after that, a lot of different other organizations started coming up. It would be interesting to understand from your perspective, what have you guys seen? How the fundraising landscape in Miami has shifted over the past maybe 5, 8, or even less years? Maybe Salo can take it off again.
I mean, I'll start by saying I don't think that you could have put this panel together 5 years ago, right? So that tells you something. I mean, I think that I keep telling. I had a call from an entrepreneur this morning in Silicon Valley, and he's like, "Hey, I hear Miami's it. I want to open something in Miami. Is this real?" So I said, "Absolutely, come on down. We are for real." So I think Miami's time is here, and I've seen a lot of infusion of people moving in. Obviously, Softbank is here in Miami, which is big. But Patty moved from Silicon Valley, so it's you can see that the ecosystem is growing. There's excitement, and like I said, you wouldn't be able to put this panel together. I think if you go back 3 years, you'd be struggling to put this panel together. But here we are.
I'll confess that for the last 5+ years that I've been investing out of Miami, I have counseled our most promising founders to leave, because when they got to the inflection point of hiring more talent or requiring more capital, it was just a harder story. It was harder. It wasn't even just the story. It was real. It was harder to get somebody to move their family. It was harder to keep the momentum. And I'm so excited. It's been creeping, but obviously 2020 was a watershed moment where we have one company in our portfolio that was actually, it's in the space sector. So there was some consideration for the Orlando area, but they had moved most of their team to Berkeley. And things have changed, and now they're super excited about building here, and we don't feel like we need to tell people you can't do it. So now Miami, in my view, should be kind of gaining its rightful place in its share of tech, which has so far been subpar. So I don't expect that we're going to become, San Francisco anytime soon, but now it is a great, viable place that have gotten to really critical mass, and, the amazing amount of success stories that have just come up in the last 2 weeks, but there is no reason that you cannot do it here. So now it's just a question of where do you want to do it?
Yeah, it'd be interesting to get Pablo's perspective here, right? Softbank, maybe a couple of years, would they have come here? I don't know. Let's see what you got to say.
So I mean, me personally, I haven't been around the ecosystem that long. 5-6 years ago, I was in college. So I can't really speak too much about the change over 6 years in the investment landscape, but I've seen it play out over the last 2 years. So I've seen it in two different perspectives. One, as just seeing how Miami has shifted in the perspective of people, young professionals. Right now, when 5-6 years ago, it was really New York or San Francisco where you went. Now Miami is at the top of the list, which I think is really exciting, because the more talent that Miami attracts, it'll become a more attractive location for new startups, and sort of it's a virtuous cycle that feeds on itself. So I've seen that sort of on a personal side, and then in the investment side, I can see in the past 24 months, it's just been a radical change that has specifically accelerated in the last 5 months. So it's been a very quick shift. The momentum is picking up quickly, and more you're seeing, names in some of the top names in tech, in VC, taking Miami seriously as a destination to either move their headquarters or move themselves to live. So
that's happening, yeah. So. As we've been mentioning over the past couple in other panels as well, I mean, we all understand that the Miami tech ecosystem is growing like crazy. It has been growing like crazy over the past couple of years, but we're still not as mature as maybe Silicon Valley or the New York tech ecosystem, right? And that's the reality. So being an earlier stage ecosystem, if we want to call it one way, what are the challenges that you think entrepreneurs and investors will have in this particular ecosystem, considering the stage at where it is right now? Maybe Patty can go with this one.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's really, really good to help the Miami ecosystem thrive and triumph in the best possible way, to make sure that we do keep a global perspective and we benchmark against the best of what's out there. So we would love to back Miami startups, but as a firm, we like to be global. And part of the reason is we want to make sure that we pick the best. And it's hard to know what the best is without having diversity of opportunity. So I think one thing Miami can do is continue leveraging its multi-cultural and international perspective to attract diverse points of view and to make sure it's not regionally competitive, but globally competitive. That's one thing. And then the other thing is, it's always great to be the first, but what's the great thing about not being the first to arrive in a market is you can learn from the market leader. So let's look at all the successes of San Francisco and markets that have maybe made it quicker than us, take the best we can and make sure we don't fall into some of the traps that have led them down, what now seems to be commonly known. So let's make sure that we think of housing and inclusion and opportunity and diversity from day one. So we do it better.
Great. I don't know if Pablo or Salo want to add something to that. No.
I think Patty hit the
nail
on the head.
Perfect. So maybe for this next question, I'll take Pablo first, because you mentioned something. You mentioned that that you've been seeing a ton of interesting companies here in Miami, and I mean, we don't have to name specific companies, but it'd be interesting to see from your perspective, from all of your perspectives, is what are the types of companies that you've been seeing? Any sector in particular, any industry in particular that you've been seeing popping up here in Miami in the tech ecosystem that's worth noting?
Yeah, good question. So as I mentioned, Miami seems to attract a lot of companies in the travel and hospitality space. So we're seeing a lot of companies, startups that are travel oriented, helping hotels to renting out their amenities. So that angle has been disproportionately big that we've seen. Obviously, a lot of Latin influence. We're seeing a lot of Latin-focused companies coming up. And I would say those are probably the two most distinctive themes that we've noticed across our pipeline.
Great. What about Patty and Salo?
Maybe to add three more themes, just thinking of the last, great handful of companies that I've looked at. So we invest in really breakthrough technology. So one, space is something that, because of NASA's proximity, there's we have one company in our portfolio, Skyloom, which is the one I referenced earlier, that wasn't considering Miami, but now is considering for their manufacturing, which I think is a huge boon for Southern Florida. But we see other things too that are really exciting in the space. Another thing, which is a very Miami thing, is wellness and lifestyle. So this is a city that stands for that. So it makes sense that a lot of companies are either being founded or relocated here. It attracts that kind of people. And I haven't seen this yet, but I'm looking forward to, we have a huge strength in design. We have a huge strength as a city in international logistics, and should be giving our geography, obviously travel as well. And so I expect a lot of things in those ecosystems to flourish here.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add is nobody's mentioned VR. With Magic Leap just up 95. I got my fingers crossed that's a huge success, and that spins off Miami as a hub for VR/VD, in the US.
Great. So before we have a couple of questions from the audience, but before we move on to those, I wanted to ask one last question, which is, if you could see the future, right? How do you see the Miami tech ecosystem in 5 years from now?
Go, Patty. Go.
All right. So I think that it'll be an integral part of the ecosystem. Like, just the economy is technifying, and tech will be integral here. So it won't be the center of the city. It'll be a firm part. And I think that that it'll be real, and it'll be significant, and it could be like what Miami has been historically for other industries. It'll take that spot in in entrepreneurship. And if you look at business formation and entrepreneurship broadly, not in tech, but in general, Miami has been a leader for decades. And I think so we will take a leading spot. I mean, I guess we would be for sure in the top 10 and almost for sure in the top 5 cities for tech ecosystems in the US.
I'm also very bullish on this city that we all love, that sort of takes anybody and makes them a native in 2 to 3 years. Anybody's a native after 2 to 3 years here. But I think that sort of what makes Miami, the essence of Miami is America, right? It's come to America. It's the gateway to America for so many Latin Americans like me. And for me, it's I think that spirit and that entrepreneurship is only going to increase with the amount of focus we're getting. I think you saw the Knight Foundation invested this week in FIU, and including increasing the IT there, and U of M's making great investments. I think also with the pandemic, some of the blessings is sort of this remote work, and I think that's going to help us resolve some of the talent. I mean, every tech company, when I ran a tech company, I said my biggest challenge was talent. Microsoft said they had unlimited demand for talents, and Microsoft has unlimited demand. Imagine everybody else. So I think I'm very bullish. I think there's nothing wrong with this city. There's nothing wrong with this state. It has great state, great taxes, great weather, people who really want to help entrepreneurship, that spirit of we can do it. So I'm pretty bullish on what we'll be in 3 to 5 years.
Great. So I don't know if you want to comment on that as well, or we can move on to the questions.
I was at one point, which is, it's a well-known phenomenon that tech ecosystems develop exponentially. Walt Isaacson documented this very interesting in his book, The Innovators. If you look at the story of Silicon Valley, it's very similar, right? Once you accumulate a certain critical mass of talent, the ecosystem starts to grow very quickly. I think Miami has the opportunity to see that curve happen right now. It would be very exciting to see that play out.
Great. So Eva here is asking, hi Eva, how are you? She's asking, what are the best entry points for young professionals into venture capital? Well, that's a great question. It's a tough place to get into. So maybe Patty can start with this one.
I'll kick off by saying that the entry points have broadened so much. So just a few years ago, I would have said the best possible education to get an entry level, let's say less than a decade ago, would have been having a solid background in something like consulting or banking that can really teach you how to run processes, how to filter, how to work with teams. And it's really, really quickly moved so that it's equally as important to be able to interface and interact effectively with the startup community, which is typically a totally different makeup. So now experience at successful startups that have scaled and understanding of the specific ecosystem that you're going to focus on investing and having the relationships is just as valuable. So when people are looking to add a person to the team, and junior roles are very rare because there's not that much like junior work, like basically, there's not a lot of delegation and a lot of like paper there. It's meeting people, assessing them, analyzing and negotiating. And most of that isn't that easy to delegate. But I would say those are the two traditional paths, plus any other one that you can make an angle to pick and win good deals at the early stage. And it's been broadening. So if you have an interesting, unique point of view to bring, and you are ready to hustle and work really, really hard, the more you prove your mettle of being resourceful to getting to the right people, that's like a good indication that you're going to be good at VC.
Great. So let's see what Pablo's question. So when it comes to investing in a project, what has more weight, a new technology or innovative management model?
I can try to take one. I'm not sure I know what an innovative management model means, but I would pretend I do. So I apologize in advance. Hopefully I'll nail it. But to me, I always ask myself, what's the problem you're trying to solve? And to me, the most important piece is what is the problem that an entrepreneur is trying to solve. So many people start the other way around with some kind of technology and try to fit it into a great idea. But to me, the best investments we've made or the investments we make are where an entrepreneur sees a problem, has some innovative, some technological ways to fix that problem, and is committed to solving that problem. And obviously, we want a large problem to solve. So for me, the most important thing is what is the problem you're trying to solve. I hope that answers the question.
Interesting. So Katina, from our team, from the Endeavor Miami team, if you're an entrepreneur fundraising for the first time, what advice would you give them? That's another interesting question. Maybe Pablo can take this one.
I would say not focus on fundraising, focus on the business. I mean, I've seen in both at Softbank and before, a lot of entrepreneurs I think give a disproportionate amount of attention to fundraising. I think building a great business is the easiest way to fundraise.
Right. Any Salo or Patty? Do you have any other?
My advice would be to get ready to hear the word no. Quite frankly, I feel bad because I have to say no something like 200 times to say yes, and I try to give constructive criticism to the entrepreneur, but you only need one person to think you have a great idea at the right time at the right valuation. So and there was plenty of people that told the Airbnb guys that it was a crappy idea, and told the Uber guys that it was a crappy idea, and told Facebook that it was a crappy idea, and you just need one person to believe in you. So just you need a lot of no's to get to that yes. That would be my advice.
That's amazing. That's super interesting.
And the best thing is learn to be scrappy and avoid, the less money you need and the less dilution you need to take, and the better position you are. So, set yourself up for as much success as you can, and then take the capital when you need it and it's available.
That's fantastic advice. Thank you, guys. So which is the best way to find investors in Miami interested in fintechs based in Miami, but with a spatial focus in the Latin American market? Interesting question. So actually, maybe going off of that question is, are you guys focused on investing in companies? I believe Salo is not, correct me if I'm wrong, Salo, but investing in companies that operate in Latin America?
Yeah, so we'll invest. We have 19 portfolio companies. 4 of them are in Israel. The other 15 are here. We love to invest in Latin American companies, but first and foremost, in the companies we invest in, is we take a closer model to PE than we do to VC, and we get very involved with companies that help them. We're all former operators of scaled companies. So the only way we can really help a company is if they have some kind of U.S. exposure. So we will not invest in a company unless their operations are here, but and we can help them, or they have some kind of, or they plan to come to the U.S., or there's a way for them to enter the U.S. So if a company is based here, we probably would look at them. But again, we need a way to be able to impact the company. If they're based in Latin America and their customers in Latin America, it's hard for us to move the needle for them.
So going back to the question, is there any way you suggest entrepreneurs to connect with funds here in Miami that would be interested in investing in Latin America? Softbank investing in Latin America, so we can check that out.
Call Pablo.
Maybe I can pipe in and say that as a general suggestion. If you're look at the companies that have been founded that are in your sector. It can be fintech or everything else, and start looking at the cap tables and see who's doing it. Obviously, specifically fintech, LATAM, there can be a separate conversation. We don't invest in fintech, generally speaking, but just that's the homework, right? It's like figuring out who would actually end up cutting the checks of that size in that space. And the easiest is to go on Crunchbase and see what else have they funded.
That's great advice, Patty. Thank you so much. So guys, unfortunately, we're done with time, but it was great getting your insights on your experience, and it's always great connecting with everyone. So thank you for your time and for your feedback to everyone who's listening.
Thanks.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
inviting us.
You guys.
Thank you for having us. Take care.
Thank you, Sandro. Bye.
So thank you all for that great conversation. And we've come to the end of our event. I hope you all have enjoyed it as much as I did. Very real conversations, great insights and advice. Again, as I said before, Endeavor is a community effort. We are a mission-driven organization to create a strong entrepreneurial ecosystem supporting entrepreneurs to really get their companies to scale and be successful. So if you want to connect with Endeavor, just please reach out through our social media or through email. We're happy to include you in our local network. And I want to thank all our partners, mentors, investors, entrepreneurs, and all the speakers today for making this possible. So please reach out. And again, we're here to support you, and stay tuned for more great conversations coming in the next couple of months. So your purpose is our endeavor. Thank you and have a great afternoon.